I am going to tell you how I make organic chicken bone broth. So when you cut up your carrots and your onions and your celery, what you would consider throwing away, you need to put that in a freezer bag and start freezing it. I do separate little bags of one for carrots, one for onions, and one for celery. And then you're going to take a whole head of garlic, put it in the pot, put about a teaspoon or tablespoon, whatever you prefer, of rosemary and thyme. And then you're going to put some organic chicken legs, a pack, but depending on how much you want to make. I'm not sure what size this bad boy is. I think it's a 6-quart, possibly. I fill it up with water after I have put in my chicken legs. So while they're thawing, because usually I freeze them, I buy them on sale and I freeze them, and while they are thawing, I will put this setting on saute so my water can start getting warm while I do the rest of the work. And I really honestly prefer to use a crock pot. I don't know why, but I feel like it just does better. It makes it taste a lot better. So you're gonna put the lid on the pressure. Gonna put it to close, and I'm gonna make sure that setting is on close. Now let me get my recipe I wrote out to see what I'm going to time this for. It says to pressure for 45 minutes. I wrote out my recipe a long time ago. That way I would not have to guess and wonder. I'm going to hit timer. Let's see. Well, first of all, you have to hit chicken or cancel, because I had it on saute. So cancel, chicken, timer. Gonna put it up to 45 minutes. And then it'll just start on its own. And then I will keep you updated. I'm going to show you your must-have items while this broth is cooking. It took it about 15 minutes to heat up and to start pressurizing, and for this to start counting down. It took about 15 minutes, so that helped. Using the saute option to get the water hot while I prepared the rest. So these items that you must have are a big, large glass bowl and a strainer that is metal. I highly recommend using metal and glass over plastic. If you have really hot liquid and you pour it into plastic, it releases toxins, and that defeats the whole purpose of what we are doing. We are trying to be healthy and put vital nutrients and good organic things in our bodies. So you need those two things. Before I use my broth, a good tip is make sure you heat this glass up with hot water, because it will break if you pour hot liquid into a cold glass. So don't do that. Heat it up super good. I always heat things up with hot water. You're going to have a nice ladle and a good strainer. This right here is good for canning. It's a canning jar. Excuse me. It's a canning funnel. And then you need a pint jar, a quart jar if you want, and wide mouth or regular. And you need your rings and your lids. So those are the things that you're going to need. And by the time I pour my broth into these two things, using that, I give it enough time to cool. So when I'm pouring that in, I don't have to heat my jars up. I go on to do something else while that cools. This has about 3 minutes left of its pressure. And then I am going to just leave it as is and let it release pressure on its own. Because if I was to hit open, a big, huge amount of steam and too much water will get everywhere, and I don't recommend that. Like for my countertops, that would ruin the wood. So I definitely advise anyone that's new at this, keep that away from wood. But I'm going to let it naturally release its pressure, and that takes 30 minutes, okay? This crock pot has now started to count up to 30 minutes. So if you notice that it's a weird time or got a different time, just know that it is on the release and it's counting up, so you know how much time you have on your natural release. I have my bowl nice and warm from using hot water. Got it nice and warm so it won't break. I'm going to put my strainer inside there, and then I'm going to take this hot liquid using some good mitts, oven mitts, so I don't get burned. And I'm going to carefully pour into here. And don't worry, it won't run out of the bowl. It never has with me. And then I will show you what's next. There's the broth poured out into the bowl. And this is what it looks like in the strainer. And I took the strainer out of the bowl and put it back on this so it can be straining, and I can go ahead and get my chicken out with some tongs. To give a tip on whenever you're straining your broth into your big bowl, be really, really cautious that you do it very, very slowly, that you don't, because when that stuff starts to drop out, it's going to splash and the steam can burn your hands. So be very cautious to not get burned and to not dump it too fast so you don't lose your broth. And if you need help, ask an adult, not a child, like your husband or friend or mom, for help, okay? Okay, so I'm ready for the next step. I took all of the meat off the bone, put all the bone, cartilage, and skin into my crock pot. I do prefer it over an Instapot. I just feel like it does better by experience, but I was in a hurry tonight and I needed chicken fast, so I did use the Instapot for the first round. So the second round, you're gonna fill it back up with water and put some apple cider vinegar in, just I think like a teaspoon, tablespoon. This helps leach out the marrow in the bone, which is what is very good for you. And you're gonna let that sit about an hour before you cut it on. You're gonna put some more of your frozen scraps in there, and then this will need to cook for 24 hours, and it can cook up to 48. So I will not be putting a garlic clove, a head of garlic in there until morning, because if it cooks more than 6 hours, the clove is no good. So I'll wait till morning to put that in, and then that'll be going for tomorrow. This next part's fairly simple. You're gonna wanna put your funnel on for sure, and then this little guy will just kind of sit right there on top. And you're just gonna take that and pour it in, and that is what's gonna catch your herbs. And if you're using glass jars and you decide to freeze it, do not go too high, because you're gonna need that head space so it doesn't bust your jar. So when you get your garlic head out, it takes about 6 hours to cook. Along with your chicken broth, the first batch takes about 6 hours to cook. The chicken bone broth takes about 24 hours to cook at least. You can do 20 or 48 if you want. I usually just do 24 hours. But that garlic head, you can take each one and you can just slide them out. They're going to be, it's like paste. So you slide it out, put it on some wax paper and kind of mash it up however you want. You can put it on a plate on wax paper, and all those squeezed out individually. Then you can put it in your freezer, and then once they're frozen, you can put them into a freezer bag, and then you have already prepped garlic for whatever you need. So the ways I like to use my chicken broth, and I like to enjoy it most definitely, is I like to put it in a glass mug, and I love to sip on it, and I like to just put a little bit of salt in it. I don't ever salt it as I cook it. I don't salt it as I put it in the jars. I just salt it as I go. And I put it in a glass mug, and then I heat it up for a minute, and I sip on it, and I enjoy it, and it's so nourishing, and it just makes you feel so good drinking it, and it has so many health benefits, especially the first round. Your chicken broth is going to have a lot more fat, which is a lot more of your collagen, and then the second batch you're going to have more marrow, and then it has all of those benefits that are good for your teeth and the minerals and things like that. And it costs about $10 total if you go to the store and you buy organic chicken legs and you buy your organic celery. Most definitely don't skip out on those two. Get you some carrots, get you some onion and a garlic head that has the root on it still. Make sure that you have rosemary and thyme. And remember, as you go throughout your cooking life, whenever you want to throw that away, save it, put it in your freezer. So after you have about all of this bought, and you end up getting 6 jars first batch, 6 jars second batch, which means that you have 12 jars total, and you're going to have 24 cups total. So you got 24 cups of bone broth for $10 and a little bit of your time. It personally is not that hard to me, but I don't have children, and I have developed a lifestyle to where I can do this. I'm not saying you can't do this if you have children. I'm just saying I have developed a lifestyle to where I prioritize cooking and taking care of myself, because I personally
That's just what I prefer over eating out and over buying store-bought. You can buy store-bought if you want to, but I prefer this. This is what I do, so I hope you like my tips, and I hope you like this video.